it's Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. This is the March meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board. At this time, I'm going to read a short statement that pursuant to ILCS 5 ILCS 120/7E, which amends the requirement for the Open Meetings Act requiring in-person attendance by members of public body during the duration of the gubernatorial disaster proclamation. The MTD Board of Trustees, the Managing Director, and other staff members will be participating in this meeting using a virtual platform. This meeting will be streamed live on MTD's YouTube channel, youtube.com/CUMTD. Public comment modifications due to COVID-19 are that public comments may be emailed to public@mtd.org. That is public@mtd.org. They will be read aloud in the audience participation portion of the meeting in the order that they are received. Email submissions will be accepted until the time reserved for audience participation is over. I'll ask for a call to order. Roll call.
Barnes.
Here.
Chaplin. Here. Delgado.
Here.
Vasella.
Present.
Hannon. Nudo.
Here.
Dial.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. At this time, we'll also ask for approval of the agenda, and I'm going to ask to amend the agenda to add a portion for discussion of the April regular meeting date at the end of our meeting. So that'll be the amendment to our agenda. And that will be an item that we will vote on after discussion. So that's item 9A that we will open discussion on.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve our amended agenda for today's meeting. Roll call, please.
Barnes.
Yes.
Chaplin. Delgado.
Yes.
Vasella.
Aye.
Hannon. Nudo.
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Do we have any audience participation at this time, clerk?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So Gavin Hitchens has emailed the public participation, and he indicates that he said, please add a designated stop for the Lime at Caterpillar. The nearest stop is currently at DSC.
Anything, Carl?
Yeah, if you're interested, won't normally respond to all communications,
Sure.
but it just so happens that yesterday I had a meeting with operations and planning about, well, that was one of the topics in that meeting. And so
Sure.
that actually is something that we're looking at. I can't say definitively today that will happen, but
Sure.
it certainly is something that is on the books for us to look
Okay,
at.
so we're having discussions on that. Great. Anything else for communications or public participation? I'm sorry. Thank you. All right, we'll close the audience participation portion and move to the approval of the board meeting minutes open session from February 24th, 2021. If you want to review those for a moment, then I'll ask for a motion in a second.
I would motion that we approve the minutes as they appear in our packet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the board meeting minutes from February 24th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Barnes.
Yes.
Chaplin. Delgado.
Yes.
Vasella.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Communications, Carl.
I don't have any.
Okay, and no communications from Carl. Any board members have any communications they'd like to share? Okay, we'll move into the managing director's report. Carl.
All right, thank you. So this is a report on February statistics. Our ridership was 318,071 trips, that is up 65,000, almost 66,000 from January. So that's a 26% increase. But it is still down 76% from February of the previous year. February of the previous year was still pre-pandemic, so we hadn't seen any of the impact from that yet. So we are down, but we're slowly gaining ground on that. Moving on to operating revenue, you will see that this looks very strange. And I fortunately have our finance director, Michelle, right here to answer any questions that you may have on this. The operating revenue for February, you can see that it's dramatically different for this year than it was last year. And that really is a little bit of waving of the fingers over the accounting books by the finance department, because when the budget is prepared, and Michelle, step all over me if I misrepresent anything, but when the budget was prepared, we made assumptions for how revenues would be disaggregated throughout the year on a monthly basis, and that's based on projections. What we didn't know at the time was that primarily the university revenue was going to be so dramatically impacted. We knew that our fares would be down because we had suspended fare collection, but we didn't know that we would have the major adjustment that we've ended up making to our agreement with the university. And so the projection, the budget didn't accommodate that, but that is what reality has been. So the finance department decided, we need to correct that. We need to make this more accurately reflect what's happening. And so we had two options. One, we could try to take that change in revenue projection and apply it to the next 4 or 5 months, or we could just bite the bullet and do it all at once and make the correction. And so we decided to do that and just make the correction in February. And that's why it looks so odd. But moving forward, it will, still will be very dramatic, a very dramatic difference from what it was last year, but it will look more normalized moving forward. Is that fair, Michelle, or you want to add anything?
The only thing I would add is this is really, it's easily seen if you compare our year-to-date revenue for U of I campus service in January was already at 3.1 million. The total we're going to get from U of I campus revenue for the entire fiscal year is 3.389. So we had just recognized revenue sooner because that's what we are usually able to do because of ridership numbers. So I just tried to adjust this to be, so we'll have at least some steady revenue still coming in the rest of the fiscal year rather than this decline to be talked about every month.
And there is on the next page of not on the slide, but in your board packet on the next page, there is some information that Michelle provided to me that I have passed on to you that shows that breakdown. Okay, excuse me. Operating expenses were 2.1% below February of 2020. And the year-to-date operating expenses were 2.4% below fiscal year 2020. The year-to-date revenues and expenses, the revenues are 2.3 million below budget. Again, reference our earlier commentary that we've suspended fare collection and we've had a major adjustment to the university agreement in particular, and so revenues are down. And operating expenses are $5.3 million under budget. And that's for a variety of reasons, some of which are the reduced service levels. Up until very recently, the diesel fuel prices were good and attractive, although they've been climbing lately. So we're doing okay though in that regard. And then finally, I just want to mention that in your board packet, there is a copy of a message that Amy Snyder, our chief of staff, sent to all of our employees because we've hired a new safety and training director. That individual, Brendan Sennett, is not in town yet. This is practically breaking news. This just happened very recently, and he is coming here from Austin, Texas. And so he's going to be putting his house on the market and that kind of thing, and should be here at the beginning of May to start. And we're looking forward to that and excited, and we'll bring him in May to introduce himself to you. And speaking of introductions, we also have a new assistant maintenance director, and that is Rebecca Bolt. And so I'm going to ask her to come up here and just make a quick introduction to you. So Rebecca,
Hi,
just
everyone.
hit the button on the right there.
Right there. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Bolt. I've been with MTD for about 7 years in the maintenance department. I started right out of college, which I went to Parkland for the diesel power program. I started as an intern. I then moved to part-time, then to full-time. And just recently, I accepted a job as the assistant maintenance director. In this position, things that I'm really focusing on is improving our training program. We have the option to do out-of-house training, which costs us money. It's very effective, but having the experience in our department, I would like to reduce those costs by using the resources we have within the department. On top of that, we have a pretty good preventative maintenance program. But I am looking to improve that as we get new buses and new systems as well. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to meet me, and I'm very excited for the future.
Thanks, Rebecca. Congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you very
Great.
much.
Great, thanks, Becca. Speaking of Becca's new position, she actually is replacing somebody who just retired. His title was a little different. His title was maintenance administrator. And so we've retooled the position a little bit with his retirement and created this assistant director position. And that is the retiree is Stu Smith. And I just want to give him a shout out because he has been a long time employee. He started in 1990. He started at the exact same time that I started as an intern here. I left after my internship and came back, but he stayed all the way through, and he just has been a great, loyal friend to the district and the community, and has done a great job. And so I just want to give a public shout out to him. And with that, staff will be available to answer any questions that you have through page 38 of your packet.
Anything, Carl, from board on site, online?
Brad?
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Just a dumb question is, I'm assuming that the federal subsidies are offsetting the revenue losses from the U of I. And so we're in good shape cash flow wise.
Yeah, that's correct. In addition to that, we have cut service levels to match or to mostly match the cut in revenue. So we have a combination of things going on. One is that we've cut our expenses. The service level is less than what we normally would be providing now. But then you're correct. In addition to that, we have been the recipient of funds through the congressional, the federal recovery bills that have been passed over the last year. So we have been protected and held harmless as far as the federal government is concerned.
Thank you.
Margaret.
Alan's question made me think, is the state of Illinois paying up?
Yes, the state of Illinois payments have all been made. They've made some changes to how they're doing it. They normally reimburse us on a quarterly basis, and they broke that out into a monthly reimbursement, which it has been fine. It's worked well with us, but that has allowed them to manage the incoming funds into the downstate transportation fund and manage the outgoing funds. That's given them more flexibility in doing that. But they've been able to make all the payments. The fund is underfunded right now. That's funded by state sales tax revenue, and that has been impacted, obviously. But it wasn't impacted to the degree that we were concerned that it would be. But as we go into the final months of the fiscal year, it will be interesting to see how that plays out. There may be some shortages there. We just don't know yet. I'm not expecting it to be very dramatic if there are shortages. And as we were talking about, because of Alan's question, we do have the federal stimulus funds that would be able to help bridge that gap if there is one.
Additional questions for Carl up through page 38.
Yes, I have a question. Carl, at what point will routes be coming back? I mean, do we have to get to a certain level in terms of the COVID restrictions?
So just in general, the service level, when will it go back to what the normal is? I expect that we'll, when the university semester ends, we will be back at our normal summer level of service, which is reduced from what our school level of service is. But we're doing a little more than that now, but just a little bit more than that. And so with that little bit more that we're doing now will drop off. And so we'll actually reduce the service level, but that will be our normal level that we provide during the summer. And so then I think your actual question is, when will we go back to the full regular service? And right now we expect that to be in August, like we normally do when the fall semester starts. So pending any other shoes that fall relative to the pandemic, that's what the current plan is.
One more quick question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
On page 21, Carl, the property tax revenue, it's been in the paper about some of the issues with issuing the audit and issuing property tax dollars. Are we caught in that grind, or is it other entities that are mostly caught up?
No, we're caught up on the tax payments to us. I think Michelle recently did a review of our collection versus what we expected to collect. And I think we were at 98%, maybe 98 point something percent, which is normal, because our expectation is based on what it could be. But there are always property owners who have put in for reimbursements, or they've said, we disagree with this tax bill. And so there's always a small amount that we don't collect, or we don't collect in the normal amount of time. So we're doing fine on that regard, in that regard.
So I don't want to speak for Al, but I assume, Al, your question is because the county's was potentially going to have some federal funds withheld due to the audit.
I'm sorry.
Correct?
Yeah.
So that's not impacting.
Absolutely
Okay.
not. That's our money. That's not the county's money. So they can't use our money for their operations, and that money that is ours is collected locally. It's not delivered by the federal government or the state government.
What about like C carts? Is there anything with C carts that impacts?
So C carts, yes, that could be impacted, but right now the county has a bridge loan to RPC, and RPC is the entity that manages the C cart program, the grant program. And so right now we expect that to continue. I guess I would say that there is some possibility that we might have to float that operation for a period of time until they receive that, because that is 100% funded by federal and state dollars. So right now the county is bridging that, but there may come a time where we're asked to bridge it.
Understood. Go ahead, Phil.
Has the county or the RPC asked us for a loan? I know they've been asking other agencies or other districts. We haven't been
They have
approached.
not.
Very good. Anything else for Carl? Al, that was an excellent question, by the way. Anything else for Carl up through page 38?
I'll just get the real facts and figures here. So Carl was exactly right. For tax year 2019, we collected 98.5%. That is a little bit down from what we collected in tax year 2018, which was 99.11%.
Thank you. All right, we will move out of reports and into our items. And the first item for the board is a approval of contract or potential approval of a contract with Gillig for the 30-foot compressed natural gas buses. Jane.
Thank you. So last month, we talked with you about the New Flyer contract, the 5-year bus procurement contract. And when we go out to bid for that contract, we have the ability to make multiple awards. If, like in this case, one manufacturer is not able to supply all of the models and lengths of buses we want. Additionally, as I'm sure you'll remember, we commit to a minimum number of buses when we release that RFP, and then we request options for additional buses. So with that RFP, we requested options for 5 30-foot CNG buses. Because we aren't ready to commit to purchasing these, but as we go through the competitive procurement process, it makes sense to include that. New Flyer, who we awarded the contract to for the hybrid buses, the 40-foot and 60-foot hybrid buses, does not make a 30-foot CNG bus. And so the other 2 bidders both provided proposals for 30-foot CNG buses, and between the 2, Gillig scored higher by the evaluation committee, and the cost between the 2 was comparable. We have some CNG buses in our fleet now, excuse me, we have some 30-foot buses in our fleet now, but we're getting ready to replace those with 40-foot buses. But we see the potential to add 30-foot CNG in the future. If we decide to add CNG buses, they will actually be fueled with RNG, renewable natural gas. So we are in conversation with the sanitary district about a potential future partnership for the sanitary district to produce RNG for us to fuel our buses. Those conversations are active, but certainly not finalized. So that's something that would have to fall into place for us to make the decision to add CNG buses to our fleet. So this contract with Gillig would be for a period of 5 years, but it does not commit us to any buses. It does not commit us to spending $1 with them. We just have the option of exercising this contract of 5 30-foot buses in the 5-year period. So the reason we want to enter the contract now is to hold this pricing. So what else do I want to say? I think it's worth mentioning the work we've done on the maintenance facility to prepare that facility for hydrogen. It is nearly all the work we would need to do to add CNG buses. We might need to add a few sensors or so, but that work will accommodate would accommodate CNG buses. And I think I'll stop there. Of course, if we decide to exercise these options, and we would return to the board with a request to issue a purchase order for a true dollar amount and number of buses.
And if I may just add one slight piece of clarification, Jane just said we want to enter into this contract to hold prices. And really what that means is we're going to hold the pricing structure. Since this is a 5-year contract, we have a price for year 1, and then there is an escalation clause for years 2, 3, and 4. And so I just want to clarify, if we end up doing this, and working everything out with the sanitary district, and then we decide to do this, I could be in year 4 or something like that. It's not going to be the same price as year 1, but we're locked in. We are holding that structure on how we get to that price.
Questions on this item from the board? Seeing none.
I don't know.
Or, sorry, I didn't see you waving. Sorry, go ahead.
Remind me what we use these 30-foot buses for?
Sure. Well, we haven't been using them in the past year because they only have one door, a front door. But the Gillig's Gillig's 30-foot CNG buses do have 2 doors. But before the pandemic, we would use them on lower capacity routes and in neighborhoods or areas that a smaller bus is better. Do you want to add anything, Carl?
Just they're lower capacity, so we haven't been using them because we want the bigger buses so people can social distance and that kind of thing during the pandemic. But there is interest in the community when the demand is lower, and so you don't need as much capacity. So I'm speaking about non-pandemic times when you don't need as much pandemic. Can't you use a smaller vehicle instead of the big buses? And so this has been an effort, and the reason we have the 530s, 530-foot buses that we have now is an effort to respond to that community interest in using smaller vehicles when we can. We're limited in how many of those we can accommodate because many of the routes we do need the capacity, and so we need to be able to have a fleet of buses that we can use in multiple types of operation. And so if we had 20 30-foot buses, that wouldn't work. We would be over capacity on many of our routes. So right now we've 5 again during non-pandemic times, 5 30-foot buses. That's a level that we can accommodate and try to be responsive to the community.
Dick.
Yes, can you compare the efficiency, the CNG buses versus the other types that we have?
The fuel economy, you mean? I don't have that off the top of my head. What we've heard from other agencies, though, it is that, well, I should say a lot of other transit agencies use CNG buses and they're having a good experience and they're getting good fuel economy. I don't have the exact numbers.
And those other agencies that are using CNG buses are truly using CNG, compressed natural gas. So it's the fossil fuel that's taken out of the ground. And so we'll be using renewable natural gas, which is not using the fossil fuel. So there's the efficiency at the vehicle, but then there's also the larger efficiency question. And this is responsive to the larger question. Those CNG vehicles or RNG burn cleaner than a diesel bus. And the fuel efficiency is a little better. I also don't know what the exact amount is off the top of my head, but it's not dramatic, but it is a little better than a diesel bus.
So the impetus in choosing those is the fact that we have that renewable source.
We potentially have that renewable source. Yeah, if we're able to work this project out with the almost said the school district, that would shock them, the sanitary district, then we would have that. And just for full transparency, this will be a big project that both districts, the transit district and the sanitary district, take on. And there will be some capital infrastructure that needs to go into that to make that work too. But again, this will, if we're able to make it all work, this is a good example of 2 governmental entities in the district coming together to work together for the better of the community. It cleans the air. It provides us with more diversity in our vehicle fleet. And it takes all of this gas that the sanitary district already has to deal with in a not very environmentally friendly manner. And it uses that, converts it into a transportation use that is much cleaner and more useful. So it's kind of there will be a cost associated with it, but it's a win-win cost. Don't have prices to give you or anything yet, but we're working toward that.
Can they put out enough to fuel many buses, I guess?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're talking about right now, and preliminarily, it looks like they would be able to fuel up to 15 vehicles easily, and in fact, that is a so just coincidentally, that's a volume of vehicle that makes this doable for the sanitary district, and it's a good number for us to have this flexible, diverse fleet. So hopefully that will work out.
So we don't have to use cows.
Not directly.
Go ahead, Phil.
I'm assuming, I think this is actually a great way for us to get some upgrades for the sanitary district, which are probably needed. And I'm assuming you guys have an eye on grants that might potentially come up for this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We aren't far enough along yet where we can actually apply for grants, but we're getting closer.
Anything else from the board on this item? With that, I will ask for a motion and a second to approve this contract with Gillig to potentially purchase
So moved.
5 buses.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Gillig Bus. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin, Delgado,
Yes.
Casella,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next action item is a resolution 2021-1, local funds, committing local funds for the Federal Transit Administration's low or no emission grant program. Jane.
Thank you. Okay, so this item is about buses as well, but this one's about hydrogen fuel cell buses. You guys know we have our first 2 fuel cell buses arriving any day now. So this would be the next purchase, and we're applying for grant funds. This is the same grant program that we received the initial funding for, I think it was about 2017. To start up the first phase of our hydrogen fuel cell bus project. So we're applying again, and this time it's for 4 additional 60-foot fuel cell buses to replace our 60-foot diesel buses. And part of that application is proving that you are committed to the local match. We applied for this grant for the exact same project last year and it didn't get funded. So of course, we're always looking for ways to improve the application. And this is one of the suggestions they give those of us writing these grants on how to prove that your agency is committed to the local match, is that the board passes a resolution confirming that commitment. So that's what we're asking you for today.
Questions from the board on the resolution? Seeing and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2021-1 in support of the low or no emission grant program. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin, Delgado,
Yes.
Casella,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next action item is letter C, and that is the hydrogen production station change order number 4, Carl. Or Jane, sorry.
I can start us off for this one. This change order, we don't like to do this, but we had to give the contractor Trillium approval to move ahead with this before the board meeting. So what we're asking for today is retroactive approval. By the way, our project manager from Trillium is on Zoom. So her name's Erica. So Erica is available to answer questions about this action item and the next one. I just want to mention that. Anyway, we started construction on our hydrogen fueling station at the beginning of March. and very quickly had to stop because they hit the water table, which was higher than expected. It was just about 2 feet below grade. And so we needed a solution to get that water out of the way so that they could pour concrete. And this project is already behind schedule, and we're on a pretty tight timeline. And there was no, so we spent about a week or a week and a half. Trillium worked with their environmental team. They worked with a local civil engineer. And we came up with a solution for this. And what we're doing here is we have 2 20,000-gallon tanks on site. They are pumping water from the construction site into those tanks. I think the tanks are probably both full today, or at least close to it. They've poured the concrete, and they will slowly release that water back on site. So if you look at page 51 of your packet, you'll see some photos of that water on that first day that they discovered it. And on 52 of your packet, you'll see this map where the construction site is identified kind of in the left bottom part of that image. And then the green outline spaces are where we'll discharge the water. We've confirmed that it's safe to keep that water on site in terms of it won't impact the pavement or our permeable pavers or anything. So let's see, the cost for this is $79,530. I think I'll stop there and answer questions.
Questions for Jane on this item?
Once this is all put in place, the fact that the water table can come back up at some point, is that a threat in any way?
It's not a threat as long as everything is poured and in place.
And I can jump in there for a second. So we also, hi, I'm Erica. I'm with Trillium, the project manager. So we did vet that through a few different engineering firms. What they've requested that we do is use additional flowable fill for the underground to ensure that everything is stable. So that's another precaution we are doing. The water table rises with the season. So right now it's unnaturally high. It will decrease as we move closer to summer, but this seems to be the normal reaction just based on the geography.
Thanks, Erica.
Sure.
So this is sort of like using a sump pump?
It's a lot. They drilled wells, 10-foot wells, and then they're pumping the water from those wells. Mm-hmm. And that is, yeah, it's like a sump pump. It then lowers the water table in the whole geographic area. They've dug down to the depth that they needed to, and as Jane mentioned, they poured the concrete yesterday in one of the locations, and so this solution is working perfectly. It's doing exactly what was intended. It's a shame that we have to do it, but not many people have basements in Urbana for a reason.
Additional questions from the board on this item?
I have two.
Go ahead, Al.
The estimate on page 48 from Hembry is different. So I'm assuming that they came in at a lower price from the change request.
Erica, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have page 48 in front of me. I have the PowerPoint.
So the page he's referring to is Hembry's estimate.
Okay.
The $34,050, where they included the pumps, the tanks, the delivery, the generator, and the labor. And then the board also has in front of them the change order from Trillium where Trillium's costs have been added and the markups are included.
It's 33,000.
Oh, I see. So Erica, he's referring to how Hembry's estimate is 34,000, but then on your change order under construction, it ends up being 33,000 with the overhead and profit. I think that's because Hembry's estimate includes more than just construction, right, Erica? It includes materials and equipment too.
Right, it should be. Sorry, I just don't have it right in front of me, but yeah, the way it's broken up, you're probably seeing labor under one tab and then materials under another is what I believe. And this is all based on 2 months. So we're assuming that we'll need all of this site for 2 months. If we can reduce, if we can get rid of one tank, if we don't need two 20,000 gallon tanks, we will certainly do that and help lower costs. This is just sort of our estimate of what we needed to at least get started.
Okay, so the 34,000 we're seeing on page 48 has actually been doubled when it gets included in Trillium's change order on page 47, because 34,000 is just the cost of per month. And then on page, excuse me, 47, that amount from Hembry, who is Trillium's general contractor, is separated out by materials and equipment and then construction.
Al, did you get your question answered? Did you have a second question?
Sort of, I guess the 79,000 is a firm number. Is that what we're saying, Erica?
We're assuming it's a max number. I've heard
Not to exceed.
A not to exceed. What I'm hearing is we might not need all of the tanks for the full 2 months. So, we're targeting to come in lower than this.
So, thanks, Al. So as I'm looking at this, and I apologize, I haven't looked at this in the right, obviously not the right depth. So the estimate that we have on page 48 shows $15,000 of labor for Hembry, and it's showing the rental figures for the equipment. And that's that's a monthly. Okay.
Right.
So then your package that you have here is for 2 months of all of the labor and all of the equipment.
Correct.
Plus the engineering. Okay, perfect. Any other questions on this change order? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve this retroactive change order 4.
I move we approve this.
Second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve change order number 4. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin, Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next item is hydrogen station change order number 5 for Jane.
Thank you. I'm going to take a big deep breath before this one. Okay. So we don't like approving change orders and then having to ask you for a retroactive approval. And we also really don't like telling you that the information has changed. But that's where we are with this one. So on page 53, you have change order 5. And in the week since this was printed, we have new information. So that's what I'm going to present to you today. Trillium has been, well, if you could go to the next slide, that'll help guide us. Okay. I hope you can read that. So the the request for board approval is about whether or not to run the power that connects our hydrogen station to the Ameren meter underground or overhead. And last summer, we talked about this and just kind of got a feeling from you all whether you were comfortable with us moving in this direction at that time, moving in the direction of overhead, moving in the direction of underground power. And our estimate at that time was about 50,000. Also at that time, we weren't sure, and really we weren't sure until just recently, how the timing would work out with our solar project and the hydrogen project. So it has always been our plan to connect have a direct connection from the solar array that we're installing across the street on the sanitary district land that we're leasing. It has always been our plan to connect that to the hydrogen station so that our hydrogen can truly be produced with renewable energy. Because the timing has worked out, it makes sense to include the work to connect the hydrogen station to the solar array only to the point south of University Avenue. The solar contractor will bring it there to just south of University Avenue, right on our property. But it makes sense to include in Trillium's contract the work to connect the solar from hydrogen station to that point. So they'll be digging a trench to do that, and they can put both the underground connection from hydrogen station to Ameren meter and underground connection from hydrogen station to solar in the same trench. So we have some shared costs here, and that's one of the mistakes mistake probably isn't the right word. That's something that's incorrect in the number you're looking at in your packet. So let's look at this screen. I'm going to go through all of these slides, and then I'm sure we can have a good discussion about questions. So looking at the left slide, my blue column, the original change order amount that Trillium provided was $145,000. $31,000 is for the trench, which really should be allocated to the solar change order. So that comes out of our Ameren underground change order and goes into the solar underground change order. And then additionally, we've been able to renegotiate with Trillium, and Trillium's been able to renegotiate with Hembry, and we've been able to reduce costs by $45,000 for that underground connection of the Ameren line from hydrogen to Ameren meter. And Trillium also agreed to reduce their overhead and profit. So we're down to $60,000 for the connection, the underground connection from hydrogen station to Ameren meter. And you can see there that the cost to go underground for the solar is at $46,000. So a total of $106,467. And if you guys are at all like me, you need more of a visual. So I have a couple slides on that. If we can go to the next slide. So dotted lines mean underground, and you can see hydrogen station connection to Ameren meter and connection point for solar. Here's the cost of that, the total cost. And of course, this would avoid tree removal. It has a better appearance, and this is actually Ameren's preference. If we go overhead, there's an easement process with Ameren, and things get a bit complicated, and Ameren always prefers to stay off customer property. If we could go to the next slide. This is what I'm calling option 2, where we stay overhead with the Ameren line, and we still go underground with solar as planned. And you can see what that cost is there. And of course, the advantage to this is the cost savings. And on the next slide, I calculate that. So the difference in these two options is $49,600, which happens to be pretty close to what we estimated last summer, but it's taken us quite a bit to get there. I think that's my last slide, and I'm happy to answer questions, and Erica, of course, can as well.
Questions from the board on this change order? I do have, go ahead, Phil.
So I just want to understand where we're at here. So originally, we hadn't planned any cost in the original plan for getting the power from the solar from the sidewalk to the hydrogen station, correct? That was just, we left that out.
We had planned to include it in the solar contractor's scope of work. But when the timing worked out, our engineers on the solar project recommend we include it in Trillium's scope of work.
So was there something budgeted in Trillium's original contract for doing that work, or did we leave that up?
When we went out to bid for Trillium's work, we weren't far enough along in the solar contract to know to include that. So no, it was not included in Trillium's original scope of work.
But I want to clarify, it wasn't a mistake that it wasn't included. We just didn't, it was going to be in the other project.
So would this amount that is being asked for be in addition to the $50,000 that we approved prior to that?
No. This is the more exact version of that request. That was our estimate.
Additional questions? Margaret? You got your mic.
Sorry, I guess it's still confusing after all the discussion. So like Phil, I want to, sort of get it clear in my mind. So this new proposal would run the lines under the ground, but bury sort of two cables in the same pit.
Yes.
Mhm. And the trees will be there.
Yes.
Okay. And we're talking double the amount we originally thought.
No, we're talking almost exactly the amount that we originally thought, 49,000.
So you already approved in July for this work to be done up to 50,000. Full transparency, the reason we're bringing this to you is because we thought it was going to be 145,000 instead of 50,000. And we all, I mean, first of all, you didn't give approval for that, but also staff was saying, okay, this is a whole different discussion now. And so we brought it back, but we put the board packet together, and Jane went to town on Trillium and their contractors to really knuckle down on this cost. And so now in the intervening week, it's been readjusted. So now it's actually under 50,000. It's I don't, what was it, 49,600?
Let's put the slide back up there. Let's run through the slides one more time while we're thinking about this.
So just to finish, so we're actually, you technically already approved it for 50,000. The actual cost is
49.6.
Sorry, is 60,000. So we have to ask for approval because you would need to, it's 60,000 instead of 50,000. But the difference is 49,600 between the two options, which is right in the neighborhood of what we talked about originally.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Margaret, I misspoke. And I understand now you were asking that because in your mind you were including, I imagine, the 46,000 for the solar, and that's how you got to double. Yeah, so the underground solar connection is not something we're asking for approval on today. We don't need approval on that, right? Because it's under 50,000, but of course we wanted to give you guys all the information.
Oh, so we're not talking about whether we're going overhead or underground. We're talking about different ways of going underground.
No, that there is still the option to go overhead with the connection from the hydrogen station to the Ameren meter. you do still have that option, and the cost for that is $10,711.
So Margaret, the two options are, we will have one line above ground and one line below ground, or we can put both lines underground. So the $10,700 cost puts the Ameren line on poles above ground, but we still will put the solar line underground. That line can't go on the same pole. They can't go on the Ameren poles. So that still will go underground. So option one, or maybe it's option two, I guess, is above ground and below ground. Option one is we put both below ground. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got that. And none of this includes the cost of getting rid of the trees if we do the overhead.
No, I think that is built into the Ameren cost. Is that right? Or is
It's not, and we can do that in-house, so the cost will be pretty minimal.
Phil.
I guess I always think about stuff from a maintenance perspective because it's sort of my trade, but we're talking, this is metered at the primary voltage. So we're talking about the location of the termination of Ameren's facilities changing. So if we go above ground, Ameren's responsibility terminates at our little substation in the back. If we go underground, Ameren's responsibility ends at the street, and we have responsibility for a 12 kilovolt underground line that runs from the street to our substation for forever, right? So if that breaks, if there's damage from tree roots, if there's any issue, lightning strike, et cetera, we've got to find a contractor that can repair a high voltage line underground, because Ameren won't do that for us.
I don't know how much of a difference this makes, but I think it's medium voltage. Isn't that right, Erica?
Right, it's a medium voltage line.
What would that be? Would that be 12 kilovolts?
12.
Yeah, that's still beyond anything we could do in-house, right?
we would not do it in-house. That's correct.
So I think this was, go ahead, Al.
On page 54, could you kind of show us on the picture where the underground is going to occur? Underground trenching?
Sure. And could you go back, I think, 2 slides? That might be also a helpful visual. Yeah, so my blue hydrogen station on page 54 is the same as my gray hydrogen station on the screen. And so the underground would go from that station to just along the north property line. And gosh, I can't point, that's not helpful. It's gosh, maybe 10 feet or so offset from the west fence line.
How about using left or right on the picture? Is it left of the hydrogen station or right of it?
Above the hydrogen station. And on page 54, north is up. So starting at the hydrogen station and traveling north, like right on that tree line, those circled trees. And the reason the trees are circled is because if we went overhead, we would have to remove those. Did that answer?
I'll just add one or a couple more items. So if you do want to connect your solar station, somebody, if not Trillium, will have to dig this trench at some point. So the idea here is we're digging a trench, let's take advantage of it while it's open and do the solar and the utility at the same time. So unfortunately, there's not really a cost savings. I talked to the contractor and he said, look, the civil work it's still there. It's still the same cost. We're not adding extra dollars in the civil just to do the excavation. So there's that. There's also the fact that we do already have these Baker tanks in case we're digging this trench and we come across water. hey, let's do it at the same time while we have equipment on site to remove the water. That way, you know, you're not paying for a third month of a $20,000 Baker tank rental and, you know, digging or extra pumps. So that was kind of the reason we were able to lower price with equipment rentals and just like Jane said, the timing of everything, trying to do things together so we don't have to take equipment offsite or bring another piece of equipment on.
Phil.
Yes, the other thing that's changed since we last discussed this is we're talking about open trenching rather than direct boring. I guess I'm curious to know if it's likely that the trees would even survive that, but also why the change?
Yeah, we did talk about the two options of boring and trenching. Erica, do you want to speak to that? Why we landed on trenching?
Sure. So with the boring, I think the way it would have worked with the existing underground utilities, there would have had to be several pits. So you weren't able to just do an entry and exit pit and get it in one shot. There would have been, if I remember, at least 2 or 3 pits, and then you still needed to go back and do concrete restoration because I believe they were coming in more on the parking lot side. And when speaking with the contractor, we know that the trees are big, are something we want to keep and make sure they're not damaged. From what they're telling me, they're saying that the trench will not disturb the roots, and it shouldn't cause any of the existing landscape to be damaged or die in the future. I was very adamant. I made sure to check 2 or 3 times, and they said there shouldn't be a cause for issue.
Any additional questions from the board in the room or online? So not hearing nothing. So just to be clear, so if we do the overhead, Ameren is going to own the service. They're going to own the overhead line clear up to the power station or to the hydrogen station. Is that accurate? They're not just going to end at the street. They're going to own and maintain to the hydrogen station.
Not quite to the hydrogen station, but certainly closer. So they'll bring it just north of the sidewalk, if you can picture that.
Sure.
And then Trillium would bring it underground to that point.
No. So okay, all right.
The sidewalk that's on our
yes,
property.
Sure,
Yeah.
I understand. The sidewalk that runs between the 1103 or 1101 and 803.
Yes.
Okay. And this might be a question for Eric. So are you going to be putting conduit in for these, or these lines going to be, how are these going to be run?
So conduit and conductors will be installed. So yeah, I forget exactly how many conduits we had for the utility itself. I want to say there were at least 2 or 3, and then maybe the solar was 4 conduits. All of those conduits properly spaced out, but sharing the same trench.
Okay. So concerns about damage to that line from some foreign material or something are diminished by being in some conduit then?
To be honest, that's how we always do our electrical install. I haven't come across an instance where, I mean, these conduits will be buried 2 to 3 feet underground, so they'll have plenty of protection. Like I said, in my experience, I haven't come across any conduits being damaged that were underground. For me, it's usually tubing that's above ground or exposed or overhead. Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Additional questions from the board on this item? We will be asking for a motion to approve change order number 5. So what's the final, what figure are we going to approve with this at this time?
On the bottom right of what's showing right now on the screen, if you can read that. So the recommended action is to approve the change order with Trillium in the amount of $60,311 for the underground Ameren connection.
And that's going to include the conduit for the solar or not?
It does not include the conduit for the solar.
That's a separate action that would need to take place irrespective of the decision you make regarding this change order. So that was, Ryan, if you want to back up to the blue and yellow columned slide. One more, yeah. So that the yellow side is the solar, and that will happen irrespective of the decision that you make on the blue column, this change order.
So my initial thought was that we were going to dig a trench and we were going to put the conduit in for the Ameren power. And at the same time, we were going to put the conduit in for the solar array in anticipation of that happening.
And you are correct.
Okay, so it's all going to be together.
Yes.
But we're going to pay for the solar array portion from a different line item, or
It's just a separate change order.
okay. Very good. So let's go back to our other slide. It's got our final amount on it. So our item for the change order 5 for the hydrogen station. Final cost on this change order will be $60,311. I'll ask for a motion in a second if there's no further board comment.
I move we approve this change order.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve change order number 5 for the hydrogen station in the amount of $60,311 for an underground electrical service. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin. Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Nudo,
We may have lost Al.
Mr. Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you for your presentation. It's all right. That was our last action item for today's meeting. Our next item is our April regular board meeting. I polled all of the board members separately earlier this week and asked them if they had the ability to move our April meeting to the 27th, Tuesday, the 27th at 3 o'clock, as opposed to our regularly scheduled time and date of Wednesday, the 28th, to facilitate something I need to be available for on the 28th. All the board members at that time felt like they had the ability to do that, and I wanted to open that for any further discussion from the board members if anything's changed. And if not, I'll ask for a motion and a second to move our April board meeting, regular board meeting, to the 27th of April at 3 o'clock.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to move the regular trustees meeting for April to April 27th, 2021 at 3 p.m. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin, Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, and I would like to thank, that carries. I'd like to thank all the board members for facilitating that for me in particular. I appreciate them. That was our last item that we need to talk about. We need to, at this time, adjourn to closed session to consider the purchase or lease of real property for use by the MTD, immediately followed by adjournment, no further action. Need a motion and a second to take that action.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session, followed by adjournment. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin, Delgado,
Yes.
Vasella,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. At this time, we'll take about a 5-minute break to allow staff to clear the room, and we'll move into closed session.